Hello and welcome to Full Disclosure, a podcast project conceived entirely to let me spend more time with interesting people than I would ever get on the radio. And this week it is comedy what? Comedy everything. Ash Atalla, welcome.
Thank you.
Producer extraordinaire is probably an apt description, isn't it?
Is this a bit where I humbly say
Yeah.
Nobody interesting was available, so...
Well, it's a bit
Ash
where I
is
say I'm
very
not sure humbly is something that you have ever been accused of before. Is it?
You don't know that yet.
No, we shall discover. But I mean, your CV is extraordinary. Most obviously The Office, which is a sort of starting point career-wise, and then onto the IT crowd, various other stopping off points. Currently, Series 3 of Big Boys, which is an extraordinary piece of work, absolutely beautiful series, and as we'll discover, lots of other things in between. But we will begin at the beginning, which was actually in Cairo.
That is correct.
Mum and Dad and the earliest days. Yeah. Both junior doctors, your parents. And I think that your dad was overseas when your mum was given the news that you had polio.
That is absolutely correct. Dad was studying in London. He's a gynecologist and obstetrician. He was finishing his exams. In those days, it was prestigious to finish your education in London. I suspect it still is. And he was over here doing that, and I was 6 months old, so I think he was present for my birth in Cairo, and then came here to finish his exams. And then during that period, I contracted polio. Clever boy that I am. and then Mum had to let him know, yeah.
And the line I've got here is the doctors told Adele, your mum, take this oxygen, go home and wait for him to die.
Yeah. I mean, in the movie of my life that nobody wants to make, I guess that would be the line. But I think there's no doubt that I wasn't supposed to live. That sounds dramatic, but it's also true.
And was that driven home when you? I mean, were you a miracle? Did Mum nurture you and treasure you and sort of wrap you up in cotton wool when you were growing up, more than she would have done otherwise?
Well, I think the whole thing, must have been traumatic in multiple sort of ways. Actually, in ways that I can only really understand with the benefit of hindsight, and also having a daughter myself, and just that what must have been the huge shock.
I read you said that. I didn't quite understand it when you said you didn't fully appreciate how it must have been for your parents until you became a parent yourself. Did you just mean you want everything to be perfect?
Well, I think you can only comprehend, I guess, what must have felt like the horror to my mum and dad when you can have the empathy to put yourself in their situation, which you can only do when you have your own child. So I just imagined being told that news myself on behalf of my daughter, and it must have been a shock because it's just not something that you factor in, isn't it? We all get, we all have hopes, but the first 6 months to be told your child won't make it, I think is what Mum was told.
Do you know why you did? I mean, was it care? Was it luck? Was it determination? Was it pluck?
The Hollywood movie version. He wouldn't give up. Listen, I have no idea. I can't take any credit for it. I was just there.
and because it was such a young age at which to contract polio, you never really knew any different. So you've not got a kind of two acts, one before and one after, have you? Because you've always been who you are.
That is exactly true. On the wheelchair front, it has always been thus. And so I don't have, you see people who've had accidents and that's a really tough gig, but this was all it ever was.
Do you think it was different because Mum and Dad were both medics? Do you think that created a slightly different atmosphere, just in terms of understanding and knowing what was going on and stuff like that? Right.
Yeah, for sure. I think in a way that whenever I've had any medical stuff, I always look at my mum and dad and I think they know too much.
Yeah.
I had operations on my back when I was about 14 and I could see the fear in their eyes that was knowledge.
Gosh,
more
yes,
than fear, because they knew.
So, again, similarly, I don't imagine you can remember much about living in Cairo, can you?
No. I go I go back every now and then, so I've got this strange relationship with my heritage, but I have some Egyptian in my psyche, I think. I love going back to Cairo. It's the most chaotic, insane place, and I've also got lots of extended family there. But yeah, no, it's essentially as a tourist.
So then, in pursuit of nice, sort of peaceful, stable life, your parents decided to move to Belfast in 1974.
Yeah, that is the funniest thing that Mum and Dad did. My parents are great, and I love them dearly, but to give their child a better life, they moved to a war zone.
Did they? I mean, they must have known what they would do. I mean, were there more opportunities there for gynecologists, for obstetricians? Is it?
Yeah, no. Listen, you can plot through the logic, which was Dad had seen, let's say, inverted commas, the West,
Yeah.
and they incredibly selflessly decided that if the son was going to be a wheelchair user, then Egypt was a tough background to do it in, and they're right about that. They're still right now, and all those years ago. So I'm really grateful for that. But then just moving to the UK was not easy, and it was in the days where brown doctors were being welcomed.
Right.
To
74 is quite, yeah. I mean, it's a different age entirely,
right?
isn't it?
So the call was out for doctors and nurses to come to the UK,
right?
But not to the good bits.
Okay.
Not to the best bits. Not to the bits without war. To the bits with war. And the funny thing about growing up in Northern Ireland is that there were lots of other Egyptian doctors.
Really?
There. So and other people of various brown persuasions, and so. I think, could Dad have turned up in London and got a job on Harley Street? No.
Not then.
Not then.
Gosh.
And it was go where we will give you a job, and that was Belfast.
So it was quite a utilitarian calculation then. They would be aware of the negatives, they'd be aware of the positives, they're making comparisons. Because of you being in a wheelchair, Egypt's off the table really, and Belfast is suboptimal, but pretty much the only option.
No, absolutely. And I can't really imagine it's such a culture shock. Their English would have not been perfect. Where to begin? The weather, the culture, being away from their family, the son who's needs a lot of help, specialised schooling and all of that. So I think they did me a real solid.
Well, and in fact, I think you've described your dad as wanting you to grow up in a place that didn't mean you'd have to beg for money on street corners. So again, we're exactly the same age. We're both born in 1972. I think we forget how long we've been alive. So if you were to go back 53 years, that would have been the reality for people in developing countries.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true. I don't think there'd been any expectation of me to have anything like a career. I don't know how that would have worked. It's really hard to get around.
Yeah.
Anywhere.
Sure.
But it's really hard, there. And so, look, when you go to Cairo, you see mostly people who have handicaps are on the streets.
Wow. And
in homes, I guess, special homes.
When did you become aware of this, Ash? When did you sort of realise? When did you clock that Mum and Dad had done you this solid? Because it's not something you'd be aware of when you're 5, 6, 7 years old.
It's been gradual.
Has it?
It's been gradual, and I'm also surprised at how recent some of it has been, which is maybe selfish of me. Like I haven't really thought it through, but I will come back to this thing about my own daughter. I think that really solidified for me what it was, and also you kind of look at the life that they left. Mum came from I think she came from a fairly wealthy background in Egypt, and their life was set to be there.
So they'd have had quite a gilded existence as part of the sort of medical establishment, whereas move to Belfast and you're dealing with a bit of racism, you're dealing with sectarian violence on a bad day, you're dealing with all sorts of variables, and you're dealing with alien nation and insecurity.
Just a massive rug pull, like a massive sort of scratch needle on their life. So,
Scratch needle.
thank the scratch needle.
Yeah, and there's no doubt in your mind that that's what it was. It was a calculation based upon the best available future for you.
They did it absolutely for me, and so it's nice to be sitting here in the studio with you in a weird way to be able to thank them as well for that
Yes.
sort of thing.
Why do I read in my capacious research, I don't know where this phrase comes from, that your dad was a cheeky chappie from the streets of Cairo?
Do you know, it's probably his own word somewhere. That sounds like the sort of thing a cheeky chappie would say, didn't it? I think my mum and dad, they were a bit like, I always think it's Billy Joel and Uptown Girl. I think,
right,
yeah,
yeah.
Dad really was a handsome scoundrel from the inner city, and Mum came from Upper Egypt from, I think it's oil, or there was some mad thing in their background, and I think he wooed her at university.
He must have been as bright as a button, though, to get into medical school, to go to university.
Yeah, he's a grafter as well, and, you know, if he was here, he'd spend hours telling you how he's outperformed what life threw at him. Yeah.
We'll get on to a little bit later, because you've described him as one of those people from overseas who's determined to be more English than the English. But I want to know what your early memories are of Belfast, what you recall about growing up there.
Well, really happy memories of Northern Ireland. So, of course, the people are funny as hell. They're warm. They're engaging, and my mum and dad and our whole family still have an awful lot of friends from that point of view. I remember the Troubles.
Do you?
So mad to say that, but I remember the Troubles. I remember on a basic daily basis my wheelchair being checked for bombs. Yeah, those things that they...
Yeah, look underneath it, I suppose.
Like a big dentist mirror.
Yeah.
As if I would...
What were you going to... Crikey.
What was I going to do? I mean, the bad version of the joke would go, that's what got me into this mess in the first place.
But it was often note on this, on full disclosure, that we only ever know one childhood. We never have any idea of whether it's a strange childhood or whether it's an extraordinary childhood, because it's the only childhood you know. It's only later that you realise things are a bit weird or a bit different. So the Troubles are just part of your reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Belfast itself was divided. And I guess a lot of the grown-up adult politics stuff would have gone over my childhood head.
Yeah.
You know, and that's sort of something I came to learn later. But if you asked me to sum it up, I would say it was a really happy place. I went to a special, inverted commas, school, which was also part of the calculation for mum and dad. And so there was sort of specialist help as a young child. And so we still have roots there. I think of it and the people very fondly.
When did you lose the accent?
When my family eventually moved to the UK and I went to a boarding school here, my nickname was IRA. And there's something beautiful and simple about that.
Yeah.
Quite funny. You know, sometimes when you look at people, you know, we all make these quick judgments. So I sort of look at you and I'd go, he's wearing this, he's wearing that. When he opens his mouth,
Yes.
This is what he'll... And I find it amazing how accurate that often is. How often do you hear somebody open their mouth and you go,
Yeah.
bloody hell, that's not what I thought. So for me, I was sort of this young, curly-haired, wheelchair-using 6-year-old. When I opened my mouth, I sounded like Ian Paisley. It was really incongruous. I lost it very fast when I came to...
I suppose being called IRA would have a bit of an impact on you.
Well, that'll do it.
Yes, it would.
That'll do it. Yeah, IRA.
How old were you then? How old you when you made the move?
We moved here when I was about 10.
Okay,
Yeah.
so formative years then.
Yeah.
In the old country.
Proper childhood was in Northern Ireland.
And still connections, as you say, still got sort of family.
My brother-in-law is the BBC Northern Ireland correspondent.
There you go.
My
Can't
sister...
get more establishment than
No,
that. can
exactly
you?
that. So, yeah.
So your brother and sister were born in Belfast. They were
That's
born
right.
after you came over
Yeah.
from Cairo.
Yeah, so my full name is Ashraf.
Yes.
And they got Andrew and Angela because they were born here.
And because mum and dad wanted to use that dreadful word, integrate.
Massively.
Fully.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know it's a well-worn path, and goodness gracious me, characterised it very well in many comedy sketches. But, you know, I do remember my childhood really being about fitting in. It was a big driver of Dad to appear like we were here.
Yeah.
You know, it was very strong pull in him.
It's a powerful thing, isn't it? It's nuanced, and it's difficult to pin it down as being all good or all bad, but it's a powerful driver. It's a form of human not camouflage, but you don't want to stick out, because those of us who stick out get hurt.
Yeah, and I think that life was difficult enough for them
Yes.
back then, and you don't want to give people any further ammunition to put it in another way. You're absolutely right. If we look and sound like them, we'll be treated like them.
Were you aware in Belfast? I mean, boarding school is often a slightly different experience, but was your dad or your mum targets of any bigotry or what you were aware of?
I think they would say that we were received very warmly. I think Dad would probably say, in terms of jobs and job
Right.
latitude and changing around and maybe moving up that medical career path, he could maybe argue that he was overlooked sometimes. And
Probably correct. He'd probably be right when
would
you
have
said
thought
that,
so.
wouldn't he? It's a sort of little bit of old school tie and funny handshakes and all the rest of it.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's probably only adds to that drive to be part of the establishment as much as possible.
Which the next job wasn't it? Because he became a gynaecologist to the army.
Isn't it mad?
Well, I didn't mean to laugh.
Are you describing some...
It sounds like a sitcom.
Sounds like you're describing a
I
fucking
can't believe you haven't written this.
It's describing a cartoon, aren't you?
But that is what happened.
Yeah. I think this is true. Dad struggled to bring the family from Northern Ireland to the mainland.
Right.
And so the British Army were recruiting, and you're right, how they then hired an Egyptian to be in the British Army as a gynecologist, you know, walks into a bar and speaks to a giraffe. It's the beginning of the worst joke ever, but it is also my life. Stop laughing at my life.
What changed for you then in that? I mean, did you go to boarding school straight away when you got to England?
Yeah, there's a very famous school called Lord Mayor Law College that's actually hit the headlines for the haemophilia scandal in recent years. That's where I went.
Right.
That's where I went to school. It was... So the whole wheelchair school thing is interesting because, again, you talk about segregation in Northern Ireland. Really, if I was going through the educational system now, I would most likely attach to a, inverted commas, normal school.
Yes.
And they would put in ramps and a lift.
Yeah.
And that would be fine. Back then, it was segregated, and a disabled school called Cultural College, and I got quite restless there quite quickly.
Because you weren't being intellectually challenged?
Yeah. Well, no. Well, there were... annoyingly, there were two girls in my class who were just way brighter than me, and they stuffed me up year after year all the way through. But I think for me, it was more apparent. I found the segregation complicated after a while, quite quickly.
As in, why I don't want to be in this school with all the other disabled children. I want to be out in a mix of people,
Yeah, it's something that sort of started in me when I was about 12 or 13, and then quite. I'm slightly embarrassed to say it.
Why?
It's a strange. It's sort of looking around at your environment and saying, I'm not sure that I ought to be here. Why am I here? Why are we all together?
Yeah.
There's a joke that sometimes disabled people use as, one's fine and two's a day out, and if you see and I always used to think, how will I ever manage because the real world isn't only full of disabled people. So why are we all here in this bubble when precisely the tools that we need to survive are without this network?
Could you have that conversation with anyone at that age? Could you articulate that to anybody else?
As I got to 13 and 14, I think some teachers were understanding of it, and then we go back to my dad, actually, who was really understanding of it. And
well, I read, I should clarify, the reason why I said perhaps you weren't being intellectually challenged is because That's what your dad felt. He felt that you had a very sharp intellect and that your schools were not as academically focused as he might have liked.
Well, look, the truth is that it was a school for physically handicapped people, but for a variety of reasons, and I'm not a doctor and I'm not their doctor,
Sure.
lots of the students there weren't, you know what I mean? So I was comfortably towards the top of the school.
Without having to really exert yourself.
And that's just true. And so, you know, I think back then a school like Trelaw College had to take in a variety of
course,
abilities and cognitive issues. And so I think there's no way that it was sort of squeezing every last drop out of me.
Which for your dad would have been particularly interesting, wouldn't it? Because he transformed his fortunes entirely by dint of his intelligence and his hard work. And he'd made these incredible decisions for the family in order to give you the best start that he could. And there's almost a bit of a contradiction kicking in now, is that you're safe, you're happy, you're secure, you're being looked after, you're being educated. But that gives you the luxury of thinking, hang on a minute, his brain isn't being stretched. He's not being educated properly, and he needs to be, because his life doesn't end when he leaves school.
You're bang on there. You're good at this, James.
Oh, I hope so.
Take the week off. That's exactly, I think, what happened. And I think it's about stages, isn't it? Which is like, okay, stage 1, get the family overseas, be safe. Stage 2, get Ash in what is the inverted commas best disabled school in the UK. Fine. Oh, wait a minute, we've done that. It's not quite working out. So I think there's a restlessness that exists within me that I think is also within Dad.
Yes.
That is like, okay, well, we've done that bit, and what's now? And so as I started to get comfortable at Trelaw College, I also started to get uneasy about the concept of it.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
And I can tell you, a quick, funny, definitive moment, really, which was the school is based in Alton, and we used to do trips up to London, to the West End, to see a show. And I think it was maybe Phantom of the Opera, and we all got on the coach from it. So we're talking about 30 wheelchair users. The coach comes all the way up to central London and pulls in the West End, and actually it's a joke that was in the IT crowd in later years, but the lift at the back of the coach has to get 30 wheelchairs down and can only take 1 or 2 at a time. So it's like, and it took about half an hour to get us off there. And then we all went into the theatre lobby, and you could just see people going, the bloody, I mean, what? It's like, it felt like we had descended.
Yeah. So if 2's a day out, what's 30?
Well, quite. I tell you what 30 is. 30 was a seismic moment for me. And I just thought to myself, this isn't integration. This is the opposite.
It's alienation.
It's alienation.
Gosh.
And I thought to myself, and in that moment, I thought I can't continue my education here.
Wow.
I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
Isn't that mad? I was embarrassed.
Yes and no. But also conscious of the fact that this, I mean, if you take the literal meaning of education, you're not getting the one that you need. You're not being taught about how to make your way in the world that everyone inhabits.
That's correct. And also, I think what in a sense, a brilliant testament to progress, which is that I wouldn't be put in that situation anymore.
Yeah.
That's something.
How I keep talking about your dad, but your mum is obviously part of these calculations and conversations as well. If your dad felt that he was held back by his ethnicity, by his background, how conscious was he, do you think, of how worried was he that you would be by your combination of attributes, characteristics?
Hugely.
Right.
I mean, obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And made me, very aware of it. And I think there was always, listen, I'm sure you've interviewed many children of immigrants, and so that whole jump higher, faster, further than anyone else is something inherent in that psyche anyway. Add in a wheelchair to that, and I think Dad was, very clear with me, and actually all with love, but it was programmed into me that life may not be, that I shouldn't assume anything was going to come to me, and that I had to work hard for it all. And in some respects, my whole childhood was like a Rocky montage of Dad preparing me for the challenges to come.
Do you think that was the right thing to do?
100%.
Yeah.
Like, and I really mean that. I mean, it really was, and it worked out. But yeah, I couldn't quite see it then.
No.
I could sort of see it. I could see that there was nothing that I had organically that might open the doors. I could see them potentially closing. I always had a calm internal confidence that it was going to be okay, but I felt like I had to put in the work to make it okay.
You're about to move into what we call, I suppose, mainstream education at the age of 16 as a consequence of this sort of moment of clarity that you had at Phantom of the Opera. But before that, we haven't had much indication yet of the role that comedy would come to play in your life. I mean, was there a lot of laughter at home? Did you make the other kids at school laugh? Were you inhaling comedy from the television or not?
Yeah, I mean, I was making the kids laugh at school. I was apparently, I mean, I was really cheeky and mouthy, but I was probably insufferable. I've just described myself and I thought it sounds awful, so maybe I just was awful.
Now, there's a kid who the teachers despair of, but also really like, isn't there? Because you make the adults laugh as well, I imagine.
I hope I was likable.
Yes.
I hope I was likable. I think the truth is that comedy was never supposed to be the thing. The thing I was supposed to do was work in the city, was be a stockbroker.
And was that preordained? Was that being drilled into you from quite an early age?
That was preordained. That was sort of me and Dad.
Because you couldn't go into medicine.
Couldn't reach the operating theatre. Couldn't. Shit jokes every now and then he throws in. He throws in an obvious punch. You've got to put it in context of the 80s.
Yeah.
Then Thatcher's Britain.
Money.
Money. Big bang. Massive mobile phones and men in stripy shirts shouting at each other. And Dad and I, we sort of made a pact together, which I was a very willing participant to, that I would go into that.
Right.
And so then the Rocky montages became about pointing to that direction. And listen, this is a long and boring bit of the story, but the only part of that we didn't really look at was I'm not great at maths.
It's quite a big part.
Well, I wish you'd been there, James, because you'd have saved us.
But no, I suppose, well, let's not worry about that now. You'll get the hang of it eventually. Once you've got the job, you can start worrying about the maths then.
I mean, I spent about 8 years really targeting that. I did economics A levels. And inside there was a little voice going, whenever I get the maths bit, it's sort of, but I couldn't quite admit it to myself. Yeah. And I got all the way on the back of my horseshit chutzpah to working as a stockbroker.
Yes.
And I did the exams. I got my stockbroking exams. I was on the trading room floor.
I know.
I also traded currency for a while. I just was not good at it.
So did you feel like a fake, or did you just feel...
I was shitting myself inside.
All the time?
Well, I was good. I'll tell you where, to go back to your question, I was really good with the men on the floor.
Yeah.
It's a tough environment.
I'm sure.
And I was young, and to survive on a dealing room floor is not easy because people get crumpled.
Yeah.
But I was a hit, except for the actual work.
Right.
All it is he can't do the actual job.
I mean, truly.
Truly.
You couldn't have spun it for, I mean...
You can spin the early years.
But you can't spin it forever.
You can't spin it forever. And I looked down that's exactly it. I wasn't good enough to be good enough.
Okay. We jumped ahead a little bit. I still don't know what comedy was at home. What did you watch stuff together? Did you have, were you aware? And I fully appreciate that it did not feel on any level like a career possibility, like an option, like a job. But was it special to you? Was it? Did you have?
I used to love watching it.
You did,
but I wouldn't say it was a shared. I can't tell you. We would sit around as a family together, Dave Allen
Yeah.
with his glass of whiskey.
It was your thing.
That was my thing.
Yeah.
I found Derek and Clive
Yeah.
tapes early, I mean, all day long, still one of the funniest ever. So it was sort of my thing. And also it sounds pompous, but what I was practicing personally, as in sort of conversing with people. And
Being funny in real life.
Yeah. Even though I find that hard to say, but yes.
Why do you find that hard
I
to say?
don't know, because I think...
Because it's not for you to say.
Well, I think anyone who says they're funny is
Probably
the worst, the least funny people in the world. So
but you would be either subconsciously or not. You'd be aware of the great diffusing power of making people laugh.
I was figuring out how, with, I think, the wheelchair being funny and being able to bring people with you / charm was quite a key to achieving all the things that we thought the stockbroking was going to be.
To get into it. How self-deprecating was your humour? How many times would you be the sort of butt of your own jokes during this period?
Oh yeah, I'm self-deprecating. I mean, whether I mean it or not, James, that's a different thing.
Yes,
But,
of course.
No, I don't think. No, my pomposity is recent.
But would some of it be trying to beat people to the punch? Do you think?
I didn't do. I didn't do like loads of wheelchair jokes. I don't think. Although it's a thing to make people feel comfortable around the wheelchair. I don't do that anymore. But I think probably a bit more when I was younger. Make the joke so somebody feels okay.
So you go to mainstream school, then you go to Bath University. I like the fact that you researched the actual buildings, but didn't pay that much attention to the actual city, because the buildings might have been very wheelchair friendly, but Bath, bits of it are on different stories.
I mean, for fuck's sake, have you been? It's the last place.
It's literally on different stories. It's like almost cliffs looking down on other houses and stuff.
So true. I sort of needed a paraglide to get around. Oh, and the cobbles.
Yes, the cobbles, of course.
So it's a catastrophe in many ways.
But you did. I mean, as you say, you did the business. And you got on this path which took you all the way to a trading floor. You got a graduate job in stockbroking, which you did for 18 months. And that is when you had, a bit like the foyer of the Phantom of the Opera, that is when you had a moment of going, no.
Well, yeah, I did it, and they did. I just thought, God, beware the power of your own bullshit, because I'd managed to bullshit my way into this job, and then I sort of got my comeuppance because I couldn't do the job. And so I think we were all genuinely sorry, but I was just cross with myself that I hadn't sort of stopped that whole process.
It's a conveyor
earlier,
isn't it? I mean, for so many of us, it's you've said this yourself: GCSEs or O levels, A levels, degree, graduate job. You'd kind of kept, in one sense, you'd kept your end of the bargain, and you'd never stopped to wonder whether or not it was actually going to carry on rolling that conveyor belt right through to career success. And
so like a midlife crisis, really, at 23.
23, 24. How did you tell your dad?
I drove home one day and I tried to make out that the bank had let me go by mutual consent.
That old chestnut.
And funnily enough, they were kind enough. They probably looked at me as a massive HR banana skin waiting to happen, which I didn't dissuade them of.
No.
I think they gave me a few months' salary. And I think the problem in that moment was there really was no plan B.
No, so you weren't a frustrated comedian or a frustrated comedy writer or comedy producer because you hadn't even allowed that door to open in your own mind.
Plan A was really well executed until the end.
Yeah, until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't.
Wow.
And then I think that was a genuine sort of moment of fear, which is that we sort of didn't quite know where to go next.
Yeah.
And what started me writing letters to the BBC, I can't quite tell you, but I just thought I'm really bad at maths, and so what's the opposite? Words.
Gosh.
Words. And I can't, I wish I had a romantic answer for you, but something in me. But the good thing that makes me proud is I must have felt it very strongly
Yeah.
Because it's not easy to get into the BBC.
No.
And it wasn't. And
It's not easy to turn around the oil tanker of your life, regardless of where you set sail for next. You've truly gone 180.
Also very difficult to answer the question, and have you wanted to get into television for a long time?
What have you never tried before?
Oh, yeah, about that. What?
There's a degree of self-belief here, though, isn't there?
Yeah.
You had to think on some level, I've got something you want, you will want. You might not realise it yet, but you will.
Yeah, I had a quiet confidence to it. Also, there's nothing, I don't know. If people say you can't do it, what a cliche, but I know it does arouse something deep in me, I think that, yeah.
The sort of fuck you response.
Yeah, quite a strong one.
I don't think that's a cliche.
No.
Well, it might be a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason, isn't it? Because it's powerful and true.
It brought something up when people were saying, you just haven't made the right moves to get into television. True, but I kept going for a bit.
Was there a lot of rejection? But also, you're scattergunning. You're applying for everything, I sense, or lots and lots of things.
Yeah,
right?
I'm writing to BBC News saying, shall I kind of write the market reports, because I thought that would be easy because I knew about that. Yeah. I'm writing to. I think I wrote to Graham Norton. I wrote to eventually somebody called Mark Thompson, who ended up being the DG.
So who replied?
But he did. His assistant.
Right. Well, where was he at the time? He was head of.
He was running Factual, so it shows like Watchdog.
Yeah.
And I figured out as well that you had to be good to the assistants. Because without the assistants, you couldn't get to Mark Thompson. And I eventually had a meeting with him. And it's the biggest mistake he ever made, because once I had it where he worked, he was fucked, because I couldn't. And he, after a long time, and this is where my dad can't understand it. Right. It took me almost 2 years, and then the only thing I got was a month's working for free.
2 years of badgering?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's quite a long time to get a month for free.
So you'd gone all in. This is what your dad couldn't understand, is why you hadn't nixed that and moved on to something else.
I'd gone all in.
Wow.
And so...
a free month, a month free on Watchdog?
On Watchdog, yeah.
Were you answering the phones
in the background? Yeah, 100%. There's tapes of me.
A mate of mine did that once.
And he
really? But he couldn't, he was holding down the thing, not actually talking. He was so frightened.
We were all scared of Anne Robinson in those
days. I think that's what it was, but I remember watching it and thinking, you're not actually talking to anyone.
He's not speaking about a Zanussi washing machine. That line's not even on.
That's what it was. Yeah. So I mean, 2 years, you get that. Was that it? Did you?
Well, that was my real. Once I got in there, going around the BBC in those days, then I really realised. I mean, it sounds mad to say that. There was a place, there was a room.
Yeah.
I mean, you might have felt it coming into your career here. You go into a room. So Watchdog was a TV show.
Yeah.
But then you'd click a door and walk in, and there were all the people making it. And in the corner, there's Anne Robinson, and there's Alice Beer. And the room next door, Carol Vorderman's in there. She's doing another show.
Yeah.
And my mind became alive of like, these are jobs. And the embarrassing thing was I didn't know that before. And the mad thing is I kept going without quite knowing what I wanted.
But you knew somehow.
Something was there.
Oh, gosh.
And then going down the corridors, Top Gear.
Yeah.
There's a room that says Top Gear. And so then it was like a theme park in my mind of what I could do.
The opportunities are infinite, potentially.
And also a really strong sense of this is what I want to do.
And a sense of I have a right to be here. I found my tribe.
Yeah, I found my tribe, and I think because I really found my tribe when they sort of gave me a transfer to the comedy department.
How did that come about?
Carol Vorderman. Honestly.
Tell me.
I was Carol Vorderman's researcher.
What was the show?
Mysteries with Carol Vorderman.
Okay.
She was so good to me.
She's a lovely woman.
She's a lovely woman, and as a researcher, I think she would say, and Anne Robinson and all those people would say, again, maybe it's my trading floor thing that happened, which was I think I was maybe more fun to have around than at the actual work. So was I interested in Zanussi washing? I'm not a journalist.
Sure.
I wasn't a journalist. And so I think that was my sort of limitation. And she said to me, have you thought of working in comedy? And you're funny, we should possibly to get me off her team. But she got me this transfer to the comedy department. And then I'm in just cuckoo land. Then it's like, then I'm going down the corridor and it's not Top Gear in the holiday program. Then it's like, it's the Fast Show.
Yeah.
It's Goodness Gracious Me. There's Dawn and Jennifer from, French. And then I'm like, then it's like a movie in my mind. Then I'm like, this is home.
Wow.
Home.
But it wasn't an ambition specifically.
No.
It was the most extraordinary serendipity.
I worked myself into the ambition, and circumstances suddenly help. And I think the only thing I would say that made me feel humble is I had been sort of taken out of a job in the city. I'd managed to get myself into the Watchdog, and I wasn't, I was liked but not loved there. And I think when I found this thing, I felt very like I am not. They will have to wheel me out of here.
This is where I'm meant to be.
And also, it's the first thing that I've really felt good at.
How quickly did you feel good at it?
Like day one.
Really? Just knowing what was funny and what wasn't?
Yeah. They gave me some sketches to read. I don't think they wanted my opinion, but I just got a pen out, started editing them. Precocious little bastard.
Where did that come from? That confidence?
I can't tell you.
No.
I can't tell you.
And for people who don't know how it works, that is producing, really. That is honing, polishing, improving, editing.
Yeah. Wildly instinctive and wildly firm. And I just felt relieved because I was like, oh, okay. People and if I say to people, I don't mind saying I think I know what's funny.
Yeah.
It's only because I could tell you a million other things that I didn't know how to do.
Right.
So it's all right.
Yeah. And I know how to do this.
And I know how to do this. It's the only thing I know how to do.
And you knew first shift, first day.
First day.
Did everyone else recognise it quite quickly?
I think so. I think so. But I think probably I'm sure I was overtly confident or cocky, and I'm sure if I saw tapes of myself back then, I would be a bit embarrassed that I probably didn't keep my voice down.
Yeah, but you're backing it up. And
I've seen it through, haven't I, James?
Well, you've seen it through, but you backed it up at the time as well. Is that other people would realise pretty quickly that those adjustments that you made to that script worked. He's actually improved it. And he was right. That was not funny, and that one is funny. Did you introduce yourself to everybody? I've got images of you going around the corridors saying hello to all the kind of legends and famous people.
You're so right.
Yeah.
You're so right. I made myself known, shall we say. Yeah.
And then you get the part, I mean, I don't know what the trajectory is, but you are working mid-20s now, so not there long, a year, 2 years, when you are looking at scripts that are coming into the office.
Yeah, and we do this show called Comedy Nation, which lots of people sort of began on. Sacha Baron Cohen began his life, and the BBC principle of it was newcomers in front of the camera, newcomers behind the camera. Right. And behind the camera, I met a bloke called Stephen Merchant. He was also in the same stream as me, and we became friendly. And eventually he said to me, "I'd like you to meet my mate Ricky Gervais." So that was how all of that kind of began.
They had a script already?
Yeah, they had something called CD Boss.
Is that what it's called?
Which was the beginning of the very early bits of David Brent. And like everything in that moment, I would just sort of look at it and had this feeling of, I know what to do. This inner thing that came to it. So when I would speak to Stephen about it, I had sort of quite a strong view on. And I'm quite political as well. And getting shows made is a very political process. Nowadays, I call it 3D chess, which is dealing with commissioners and the system. Yeah. People don't know that about it. They think
if it's brilliant, it'll get made.
Yeah. Or you can just get, famous people can get themselves on telly. It's not true.
No, of course not.
There's many famous people getting their projects turned down.
Yeah.
So I was able to help pull the levers internally.
But you were still a kid.
I was still a kid. I sound horrible.
No, you really don't. I wish you'd
sure?
stop saying that. You
don't
sound
know.
precocious.
I was,
But precocious is a good thing.
and I still am.
Yeah.
I still am.
A precocious 53
I'm
or
a
52
precocious.
or 53.
What does precocious mean? Do you have to be young to be
I don't
precocious?
know, mate. I think I'm quite precocious.
Well, you are, and I don't mind that in you either.
Exactly, it's a good thing to
It's
be.
a good thing.
But you, I mean, it's always about backing it up and not being a bullshit artist. And you felt in the city that you were a bit of a bullshit artist, but now you're bringing the same skill set with the bottom, with the oomph, with the heft, with the alchemy that you know is working. But you would not, would any, I mean, okay, so all modesty aside, all self-deprecation aside, could anyone else have got the office off the ground in the way that you did at that time in that building?
I don't think anyone as junior as me
No.
could have got the office off the ground in that way. And I don't think when you looked at the auspices of it, it was a very slow bit of television, and it could have easily fallen down the cracks. So I'd like to say, listen, the biggest credit, let's just get this out there,
Sure.
is Ricky and Stephen.
Oh, no, of course.
They wrote it, but I think
But it could still be in a drawer somewhere.
no, it would be.
Yeah.
I will. I'll go to. I'll
You'll
go.
take that one.
I'll bring the precociousness back for that. I don't think it would have been made.
No,
without
I don't
me.
either. From my cursory knowledge of
I just
the
don't
world.
think it would have been.
that
But
you were in.
but you can say that about it. It was the alchemy in that moment. But I played my part.
And the rest is genuinely history, isn't it? Not immediately. It didn't explode out of the blocks, did it? Episode 1, series 1, everything changed.
No, not at all. I always tell the story that the only thing that rated worse was women's bowls that week. That's actually true.
But you had no doubt that it was
I
good. I mean, there's a difference. I know it's good. It still might not succeed, but I know it's good.
My brother reminded me recently. He said I brought back a little clip of it, and I said it'll be bigger than Alan Partridge.
Yeah.
You know, and
Wow.
I know. I just I'm very instinctive. Those instincts aren't always right.
No, of course
But,
they're not. But they have done more often than not.
That's what I felt in that moment.
Yes. So, I mean, look, the list is as long as your arm now. I mean, particular highlights. Latterly, I suppose people just do nothing. Staff lets flats. You set up your own production company in, I forget exactly when.
Can't remember, 15 years ago.
Yeah, so
Something more,
Rough Cut TV, 2006. Speaking about instincts not always being right, the first show that Rough Cut made, Clone, didn't set the world on fire.
No, let's go further than that. It was a stinker, I think.
Yeah.
It was a stinker, yeah. Yeah, that was just sometimes
A rare setback for you, because
Yeah,
it's
it was a
the
rare
first, the
setback.
big opener for the big new company.
Yeah.
And you're one of the brightest stars in the comedy firmament, and the first one died on its arse.
he walked into a blancmange. It was,
Into a blancmange.
yeah.
But you bounced back. What do you look for? Because I was trying in my own precocious way, cuckoo, trolleyed, IT crowd. I was trying to find the abiding theme, the thing that knits them all together, and I struggled. Do you know what it is?
Yeah, I do. You sort of try to look for to distill it into a truth. So I think if you take the IT crowd, the truth of that is that there's essentially an upstairs downstairs mentality that exists in companies, and so there's sort of there's the grand people like you and I, and then literally below stairs there are people who we're friends with when we need our computers fixed. There are people who do the cleaning. There are people like, so there is this sort of two speed thing that goes on in companies, and that was the central kernel of the IT crowd. And trolleyed, I was obsessed with supermarkets and sort of how it's sort of like big rooms of broken dreams as well as food.
Yeah, I guess.
Really. And I sort of wanted to, is it again this whole thing about life, the way that we make our livings is often the biggest disappointment to human beings. And the things, you know, you and I are lucky beyond our wildest dreams and how we get to earn our crust, but what people do between a Monday and a Friday is often the worst bit of their life.
It's probably I mean, it's
There's a melancholy to that.
well, and it comes across perfectly with Tim, doesn't it?
Of course.
In The Office,
Yeah.
probably more than any other character I can think
I mean,
of.
to
off the
live
top
for
of
the
my head.
weekend when
Yeah.
the weekend is only 2 days out of 7 is the ultimate human
Yeah.
joke that we've done to ourselves.
So that search for the eternal truth can encompass anything, can't it? So you can have something that's almost meta ordinary, like an office where nothing much happens, which is how I think you pitched it, Ash.
Yeah, right. It's
and then the IT crowd, which is, I mean, it's beyond surreal at times, but actually what knits them together is that thing that everyone will recognise, whether they can articulate what they're recognising or not. It's going to speak to something that is universal, constant.
and people just do nothing. The disappointment of a career that didn't happen, and the fact that right. And at what point do you walk away from that and go, I'll just get a job in a call centre, or do you just lay down a couple more tracks, put on another concert?
Yeah.
When does it become undignified to chase your dream? And that they're heavy things,
Yeah.
and that's what I think binds some of my work together.
Yeah.
But there, yeah.
So what is your life like now? What does... I mean, you're still presumably casting your eye over new projects, looking for something that will work. You'll be pushing development as well, telling people, can you work this up for me? You've got a foot on both sides of the Atlantic, I think.
Yeah. So now the company's quite big.
Yes.
So there's sort of proper sort of being in charge of a lot of people. We've moved into drama because I think it's a bigger canvas and it's
And
interesting.
there's more stuff getting made, isn't there?
And there's more
really?
stuff getting made. But a lot of it is sort of the stressed cigar chomping CEO and trying to keep an expensive boat together. But I'm still, I think maybe the fire that I had to prove myself is reaffirming itself, which is to try and prove myself in drama.
Yes.
As well. It's because once I had established myself in comedy and I had a look at the drama world, I saw in my mind, the chippy me saw a lot of snobby, posh people who didn't want my likes in their midst.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's true, but I think that's the story I tell myself
And
too.
it's quite a helpful engine.
It's really helpful. I just need a bit of grit to get me up in the morning. I need a made-up enemy.
Yes. Something to tilt at.
Yeah.
And it's going well.
It is, James. It's going better than I expected.
We should talk a bit about Big Boys Series 3, which is the most recent of your projects to sort of TX, as they say.
Yeah.
Isn't it? And it's another one that
Old school TX.
Yeah, well, it's my age.
Shows drop
There's,
these days.
there's
now,
no such
James.
thing as TX. Only someone
know,
said linear TV to me a couple of years ago, and I didn't know what they were talking about.
It drops now.
It drops, doesn't it?
Drops,
It drops.
And nothing happens.
Yes, exactly that. But that is again, it's got that. Well, what's the universal thing in Big Boys? Because it's Jack Rook's story, effectively.
Yeah, listen, this one is absolutely Jack's story.
Right.
It is, the game there from our side was and it's a story with multiple sadnesses as well as lots of joy. So I think you'll hear people say the following slightly cheesy line: "We just wanted to do justice to their story."
Right.
And I think with that one, you feel a responsibility to do it. It has sort of male suicide.
Yes.
Themes towards the end of it, and I think that was a real creative challenge.
To ride both horses of the poignancy and the tragedy and the comedy at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I found myself. So I'm a TV man, and
Yeah.
I'm sitting opposite Jack, and who has lived this experience. So the thing is, how do we tell that story and make it compelling?
Was that so? I mean, so here's an repeat question actually from the first show that you did, effectively, right through to one of the most recent. I read Atalla's persistence helped bring Big Boys to life. Could anyone else have got that one off the ground?
No, because we got it turned down 3 times.
You did?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I can't explain this one to you any more than I have done, which is that I don't have a temper at all. I have 0 temper. I hope my daughter and partner, and they would say to you, I don't raise my voice, I don't shout, but there is I can just say it's a fire. It's like a whole LA fire that goes off in me when I think somebody has turned down something that I can see very clearly, and I don't know where it comes from, but it's quite genuine. It's not, and I can't leave it, and I get anxious about the thought that lots of these shows might not have got made, and of course there'll be a sliding doors moment where the world wouldn't have been upset without staff, and I'm not saying I've saved the planet. Although, have I, James?
It's not for us to say.
It's not for us to say. Your words, not mine, mate. But it's. I want people to know as well, if they bring a show to our company and we believe in it, we'll fight for it, and you have to now. But yeah, big boys might not have happened.
And if I were to be an amateur psychologist for a moment, what you've just described is what your dad was imbuing in you from a very early age, is that you won't be told no.
I won't be told no. Fuck them all. He used to say, they are all bastards. That's a rough... That's my racist... that's my racist view of my dad's accent. But he that was his. It was me against the world. That's how his mentality was.
That's where the fire comes from. That's where the fire comes from. Even with so many successes in the background, it can still be ignited.
Help me put the fire out, James, because it's quite exhausting.
Well, it's a good fire. Nearly there. How have Mum and Dad? How did they find your success?
They've been great with it. A couple of things. I think until Dad saw me on the TV, it sort of didn't exist. So, and lots of the shows that I make, they probably struggle with. So you imagine showing, just let's use imagine showing The Office to your sort of 50-year-old Arabic mum and dad. So I think they thought it was shit.
But nothing happened.
Nothing happens. Nothing happens. And so, lots of my shows. So I'll often get notes from them.
Scratch this.
Why wouldn't I listen
This isn't working, son.
Why wouldn't I listen to a retired gynecologist? But they're very proud. And I suspect relieved.
What about your story? Will you ever tell that?
No. I'll just keep doing podcasts as and when invited. No, I don't know. I wouldn't have any truck with that. I would be embarrassed of the hero arc of it.
Okay. And finally, we haven't actually talked about specific ambitions, because you fell into the job that you were destined to do by accident. So you didn't sit there at 16 saying, like a sort of comedy Michael Heseltine, I'll be at the BBC at 25, I'll be a senior producer at 35, I'll have my own production company at 45. So there's never been boxes to tick off beyond, I want everything I do to be as successful as it possibly is. And obviously moving across into drama is going to be part of this, but is there anything very specific that you still want to achieve?
I'll give you two quick answers to finish. One, I think I love building track record, because without sounding like Lord Sugar, I hate bullshitters. While sounding like Lord, people say I actually do sound like him.
You did then.
Yeah, I did then, didn't I? I think to continue to put together a track record, because I always think a body of work is nice. And two is for my daughter because I think to encourage her to I think I got really lucky by stumbling, as you nicely put it there, stumbling into the thing that I was meant to do. But I don't want her to have to take that chance because she might not be so lucky. And I think finding the thing that makes you happy is the biggest privilege of my life, and that I get to do something that, whilst drives me mad, fulfills me in multiple ways. So I really want to be by her side and make sure that she doesn't not find it, or that she finds it would be a more eloquent way of putting it. That's my ambition. Yeah. For her.
I've asked almost every guest on Full Disclosure that question, and that is my favourite answer by miles.
Oh, thank you. Is that right?
That's perfect.
I'll take it.
And of course, happily, the thing that makes you happy also has made and will continue to make millions and millions of other people happy too.
You're a kind man, James.
Well, you're a great guest.
Thank you very much for having me.
Atalla, thank you.